perfectionist. We never know if someone's rating something perfect and another person would say this is totally wrong or this is like completely off basis. So I think risk is the most important factor here, and I do think that this was happening in 2025, but potentially this was happening before 2025 anyway. All right, trend 3. AI generated translation will need to be explicitly labeled. Let's hold up our cards. Yes, from Chiara. Sahil's in the middle, Erik's in the middle, and Mario's a hard no. Okay. Chiara and Mario, one of you, since you guys were the firmest on your answer, let's hear from you.
I can start. I think it's a yes because for different reasons, from different angles. So first of all, you need to label it for vendors, for freelancers, for example, who are doing the post editing. Like you need to tell them transparently that that was AI output rather than human generated output. Also, because you need to flag it to customers. For example, user generated content that is translated with for example, AI or Google Translate. I see companies that do that. They do it they show it as a disclaimer. FYI, this was generated with Google Translate, like Booking.com does that for reviews. And this is, as a disclaimer, rather to show that there might be maybe some issues, but at least, it's about being transparent on the quality of the content that you're putting out there. And also, I think also another angle could be if you label it and you, on the quality monitoring side, you flag some issues. For example, you want to pinpoint this is an AI problem or a human generated problem. So you want to share feedback to the people that are in charge of training the AI or the people that are in charge of managing the vendors. So yeah, strong yes.
Sorry, Sahil, before you jump in, I think I changed my take on this actually throughout the week. And I know we were obviously discussing this beforehand and, preparing. And for me, I guess it's almost about will it need to be explicitly labeled? And I think, Erik, you touched on that as we were talking and preparing beforehand. For last year, the trend of this needs to happen and this has happened. I definitely don't think this has happened because we do see it labeled and we also don't see it labeled. I think it's a good idea to do it for what Chiara mentioned. I do think from a European law standpoint that this might be coming. When I did a bit of research, I don't know. Again, will I trust AI that told me that this is actually coming? We'll have to see, but I think we maybe have to declare at some point. But then I'm also interested in this perspective of the almost clash of localization being created as if it was specifically designed for the user. Why would we explicitly label something? It's almost like you have English content and you would never label this was done by a human. This was created by our content designer, Peter, right? So I think it's kind of this really weird thing of like calling it out if it's wrong and there is risk and the customers are churning. Does it matter if a human messed up or the machine messed up? Like I think it's an interesting one, and I want the others to chime in because we could talk about this probably the longest, I feel.
Mario, when we were discussing though, you did mention something really interesting from your last company where you guys were labeling AI generated content, but for
Yeah,
another reason. Can you touch on that really quick?
we did have the language selector. We launched 10 or 11 new languages, and then had as soon as the customer or the user would go and change the language from by default, it might be US American. I can't remember. If you're in Germany, it might be German. And if you're actually a Portuguese speaker, you can change it. And then a little pop-up and kind of a banner would pop up and it would tell you, we want to almost forward thinking again, framing it as a positive. Hey, you who speak Portuguese, we launched something for you quickly and here it is. And it's not perfect and give us feedback. So I think the important one here is to gather feedback. And almost say you ask and we delivered and it's not perfect, but here's something that you can use. So again, that was our take. I think it was really a good idea. I didn't think that we needed to explicitly label it though. That's the difference.
If I could also chime in, but like I think when we say like on this trend, like will need to be explicitly labeled, I think that's a very tall claim that the CSA team was actually like claiming it in 2025. And building on to what Chiara was also saying, I think there are two different angles to it. And this is the observation that I had from some of the B2C companies, Booking.com, I know also HelloFresh, Berlin-based company, they are also very explicitly stating it out if it's an AI generated content. That's good. And I think that's more from a brand point of view that they need to do it. On the other side, if I look at it from, say, our vendors, like at the localized, like our clients, maybe Chiara's company, like Go Student is our client. For us, I don't think we really like labeling something as a translated as an AI is meaningless to our clients. What they are actually looking for as a client is a human auditability that is required to be done. So if we are using AI to actually translate it, are we able to give them a good score, a positive score, a negative score? And based on that score, would they want to have a human in the loop or not? I think just calling something translated as AI is not really adding too much value to our clients as much as by making sure whether the quality of that translation is good enough or not, and should they actually be having human in the loop or not. So I think just to like explicitly label, I feel it's almost meaningless and futile for our customers here.
Yeah, I mean, aside from EU regulations and brand protection, which are both really good reasons to label content, Sahil, I think you're bringing up a really important point there, that traceability and you tracking whether or what you do with that information. So somebody might say, this has been AI translated. What does that tell you about anything? It doesn't make an assertion of quality. It only tells you about accountability. So you're saying, I am not going to be accountable for the outcome of this because I'm adding this metadata to it, that this is not something I'm going to take responsibility for a poor outcome. And I think that accountability and traceability track, I mean, I think Chiara also brought up a really important point about the need for clients a buyer to know whether or not a certain process was used and what a risk exposure that implies. So all these things are part of the ecosystem of traceability and accountability, and what do you do with this information? So we didn't get universal labeling. I don't think we will, but I think we are getting traceability, and I think that's the right direction to go in, and I think it's directionally correct without being technically correct. So I'd say AI generalization will need to, no, but there are good reasons in context for it, yes. So that's where my mixed assessment comes in.
Great. And there's some interesting conversation happening in the chat too, so let's keep that going. Ricardo mentioned it should be, but it's not going to be, and they're having pushback from linguists, but also organic readers and clients saying like AI generated content is progressively being mixed with human generated content. So it's not really black or white ever. It's most of the time there is a mix. So how could you even say this is AI generated or human? Because most of the time there's no one clear answer.
Exactly, and it degrades the trust, right, when you can't tell. So then you start doubting, is this a real human or is this just AI? And there's an implicit value judgment of those two, and whether or not they're true or not true, or what do you do with that? What do you do with that truth or that assessment of truth? So companies should do it because they can clarify their accountability. There was a book one of my colleagues wrote and said, no AI included, like we had no AI participating in the creation of this book. So you're thinking now there's a tag of human only, which actually enhances brand value in this context.
Yeah, so the opposite basically of labeling things. No AI is even maybe more valuable than having an AI generated label. Very interesting. Okay, let's go to the next trend. Knowledge graphs will move from niche tooling to core infrastructure for controlling AI and content, pulling local teams into upstream data and architecture decisions. Okay, let's vote, and be sure to keep voting in the chat, folks that are watching as well. So we've got yes from Mario, yes from Chiara, yes from Sahil, and in between for Erik. Okay, let's hear from Sahil first this time.
Cool, sure. So in general, I think, and I'd like obviously love to hear from everyone, but like I think LLMs perform dramatically better when they are giving us structured knowledge. And for that to happen, I think the localization champions, localization managers, and the localization teams will be pulled or have been started to be pulled into like more content modeling side of the thing. So whether it's the style guides or the glossaries, like how should the structure look like of those documents before they're actually uploaded? That's a value add that a localization champion can actually start to bring in, which earlier I think it was more like an afterthought and was reliant a lot more on the human beings because they can make those judgments. But for these assets to be trainable by the AI and for you to be used by the AI, I think that content modeling part of the things actually have started to happen. So I wouldn't say that this is 100% right there, but this is a strong trend that at least I've observed in 2025. So that's the reason that I gave it a yes here.
Okay, and Erik, since you were split, what's your thought?
I think Sahil will agree with me on this, but I'd say that if you're taking AI translation seriously at scale and you're mitigating risk appropriately, you're handling accountability correctly, some form of structured semantic knowledge should be implicit. It should be built into your architecture. That said, I think a lot of companies, they hide that. There's a lack of governance and clarity around the semantic ownership in certain contexts that leads for a separation of those who can implement it being divorced from those who have it, to have that semantic accountability. So as a result, knowledge graphs don't get formally rolled out, but they're implicitly built into many ecosystems. I want to also note that a lot of the industry still doesn't even use AI translations at all still. I think there's a huge chunk of the industry that doesn't even touch this, but when AI is involved, if it's being done responsibly, there should be semantic structure involved with the appropriate risk management and accountability aligned in that semantic organizational structure. So that's where my no, in reality, it's hidden. It's not formalized, but it is there.
And Chiara, Mario, anything to chime in? Oh, sorry, Sahil. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just asking like Erik, like, so Erik, what you're saying, if I understood you correctly, it's like implicitly this is happening, or it has been happening implicitly when it comes to
It should be happening, and it
Yeah.
is often happening, but nobody's making a big deal about it. They're just kind of like
Okay.
parking that into that, like especially for RAG, right? For RAG approaches, vectorized models will include things like semantic structures, of which
Right.
knowledge graphs is one. In a way, TMs are kind of also with the appropriate metadata can also be an asset in the same class, and there's others as well. So it's
Mhm.
not like it as a standalone winner flag on it, like, yes, this is the future and everybody's using it. It's more like, yeah, it's also a file in the RAG repository. It's not something, and the responsibility for what that semantic structure is
Mhm.
often is separated from the people who are accountable for localization. Many of the people on the call here, we could be dealing with semantic structures that don't exist within our organizations, and the people who are accountable for classifying them may be out of reach for the localization teams. Just a hypothesis there.
Yeah, fair point, Erik. Like, I agree with you. Yeah.
I agree, but also interpreted this statement or prediction in a broader way, which is specifically the role of the localization team, especially me coming from, company, enterprise. And I see this happening, and it's also, if it's not happening, it's a call to action for me. Localization teams being more and more involved in AI dataset training, but also, in business decisions, getting up there, getting the voice heard. So that was my interpretation of this. And I think it has happened. And if it hasn't, which unfortunately it's also reality, like Erik mentioned, I suggest everybody to go up there and be louder.
And Mario, anything to chime in, or else we can go to trend 5?
Yeah, just quickly, yeah, I guess agreeing with Chiara, I had to kind of Google, and I have a linguistics degree, and we talked about semantics and all that, and I still thought this was very technical, and I had to like kind of dive deep. And when Erik and Sahil were talking, I was kind of like, this is really technical. We're deep in the discussion here, which is great. And then to level it up, like more general, I think with Chiara on looking at data, looking at the core infrastructure, the tooling. I think we're moving from niche tooling and kind of like people don't know what's involved to localization and language, having maybe a moment due to AI. So I think a lot of more people are like, talking about TMs, talking about using the data that we have available. So I think that is happening, and I think it needs to happen. And so yeah, that would be my take, to move more upstream into data and architecture decisions. 100%.
Very interesting to hear the split opinions from the vendor side to the client side to the service provider side. So good conversation on that one. Let's go quickly to the next one because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for the bets that we will be placing in just a few minutes. So the last trend that we will look at is written translation and spoken language services will converge into a single multimodal experience layer, making voice, video, and text inseparable parts of the localization strategy. All right. What do we think? Yes, no? And let's hear from you in the chat as well. Yes, yes, yes. Erik, I didn't see yours, I don't think. Yes, but is that so? Okay. All right. So pretty much yes across the board, but Erik has a yes but clause. So let's hear from Erik. Why is there on that clause?
I think that technically this has already happened a long time ago. I think users are accustomed to this and have already for a long time. I think on the back end though, it's still fragmented how we organize ourselves behind the scenes to kind of build these capabilities for our end customers. So yes, the customers expect this and already semantically kind of fuse these things together, but on the back end, there's quite a lot of disjointed fragmentation in the voice, video, and text work streams. So that's my take.
Anyone feel strongly against or for what Erik mentioned?
I think there's been a trend on that, but like to go towards like making sure that all these like different multimedia formats like put together and having like the localization done in one platform. I think it all boils down to having the shared like infrastructure models, and the companies are actually going towards it. So it might not be that in 2025 all the companies actually had it, but there was a surely like a strong push to make sure that as a single source of truth that you are actually able to like cater to different kinds of formats on it. Ultimately, in the backend, it's about like having this shared, like the shared model behind in the backend of it. So there's been a push towards it. It's a strong trend, in my opinion, in 2025 across it.
I would agree. Yeah, Sahil, with that. Multimodal experience, again, is one of those tricky keywords, but I think inseparable parts of the log strategy, 100%. I mean, with AI even producing more and more content. I mean, I discovered 11 Labs, which is this, AI kind of dubbing and voice, and I was looking at them and, even thinking about the customer experience. Why would it be different to, anybody else? Why would we experience them all separately? I think to me that doesn't make sense. I don't think we're, again, it's a yes, but to Erik's point, are we there yet? Probably not. But we need to think about it as a multimodal experience because, and then to Sahil's point, the infrastructure, maybe it gets done in different systems, but underneath is one core centralized infrastructure that can handle ATMs and whatever else in the backbone.
I think, just sorry for chiming in a little more, one sort of punctuation on this is that some of the capabilities of AI are new to this ecosystem that make certain types of things much better, like automatic transcriptions. So text to speech, speech to text. There's automatic translation, of course. There's being able to synthesize AI actors and being able to kind of create very realistic kinds of voice. You can have a song written about this exact webinar. We could listen to it, we could synthesize it, and we could have an operatic aria written about it, or maybe a heavy metal one written within seconds. But when it comes to brand contingent types of activities at scale, then the delivery of this kind of approach becomes much harder to reach your target quality requirements, and getting control over that process at a level that's going to make a brand experience positive for certain types of content that typically would have justified that expense in the first place is still very much has a ways to go yet. There's a powerful new tools, and there's still complexity to get to that last chunk of quality that we're looking for. Chiara, I'm sorry, I may have accidentally cut you off. I apologize.
No worries.
About that.
I just wanted to add that I think that it also depends on what's the value of multimodal content for each company. For example, there are companies that are all about videos, for example, and then maybe they have a more advanced tooling. There are companies that have more basic tooling. So is that definitely this has started even before 2025? Does any company prioritize that at the same level and gives resources to the best tooling to make this happen? I don't know. So yeah, just this question launching.
Yep. I also think there's a great point from Ricardo. It really depends on the level of maturity of internationalization or localization that a company's at. And beyond that, it even depends on the level of maturity your company's at of content creation. So are you even creating these types of content, or do you mostly just have text? So I think we're at an experimentation phase with this trend, and it definitely didn't 100% happen across the board in 2026. Okay, now we are done looking at the trends of CSA research, and it is time to move over to the betting table. So players, I hope you have your cards and your chips ready. It's time to place your big bets, and let's see who's going to win the jackpot in 2026. And first up, the first player to the table, we've got Erik. So Erik, let's hear your big bet. And everyone on the call, make sure to pay attention to what everyone's betting, because at the end you'll vote for your favorite player who you think is going to win big.
My bet, and I believe that I'll say this. This is about pricing. I think the value stack is shifting so fundamentally that it will force fundamental changes in how pricing is structured. I put together a prediction here. I'm going to read it. By the end of 2026, a majority of enterprise localization programs using AI at scale will no longer rely on word count as their primary pricing unit, instead anchoring spend to program fees, risk tiers, or outcome-based constructs. I think part of the reason is this because we're seeing words already have degraded as a core metric. Why? Because we've had these complex fuzzy tables. We've got AI discounts, MT discounts, where I have light post-edit, heavy post-edit. Is it reviewed? How many reviewers? All this stuff has added enormous complexity. Words are still really easy to count, and I think they're still going to be part of it. But things like tokenization start shifting as maybe the more interesting number there, because with automatic translation, the tokenization becomes such a critical component of this. Second, the risk tiers are very different. Who is grabbing the value of the value stack? Where is AI being pulled into this? This ecosystem. So I think things like if there's flat fees, minimums, enablement fees, governance fees, word rates might still be in there, but there's going to be a different shift in emphasis. Another example of me being right would be, instead of thinking about how many words it is, I think about what the edit distance is, or specifically how much time did it take to fix it, and then that metric of how much and who is accountable, and applying that accountability becomes the core value driver rather than the actual word counts themselves, which neutralize who's working on it, and they neutralize process. So that's my bet.
All right. Anyone want to keep Erik from losing all of his money at the gambling table?
My perspective as a representation from a company and enterprise is, how can you predict and forecast budgets? Like, imagine I have to predict my budget for the whole year, and it's based on a very simple system, which is per word rate. So I think you have a point, and it's fair to consider a different way of paying people for the work. But you need also to be able to forecast at scale.
Yep. The budgeting is one thing, reality is another. And I think the feedback loops of effort to outcome can be predicted and need to be built into our heuristics. So yeah, it's kind of like, if you just know the word count of a document, you don't really know anything unless you know what TM you're leveraging against. Then you know what your estimate is going to be, because now you have something to actually count, a weighted word count, which is kind of a modified version of word count. Word counts alone probably have already gone out the door as a the only factor you need. You already need this other information. Anyway, I don't want to monopolize too much because there's lots of other bets out there. So thanks for the input, Chiara.
Yeah, but I think it's a very interesting bet, like Erik. Like I love like talking about pricing and packaging, and I keep thinking about it as part of my own job as well. So I think this is, if that happens by 2026, I'll be very happy, because I'm not a big fan of using it by a number of words. But at the same time, to Chiara's point, I think it's easy. So when the customers have to actually think about it, it's by far the easiest value metric when it comes to pricing. But if I could actually ask you, like in 30 seconds, if you can answer, Erik, like when you say outcome based, what do you really mean by outcome-based pricing in this case? Like, what could be the final metric that the customer would pay for?
Well, I think edit distance is an easy one because it involves how much work does a trusted resource require to say this is acceptable to pass or fail. So that is the entire workflow there will vary somewhat on the actual requirements of the person you're holding accountable, and that accountability becomes that part of it. There are some other tracks here with regards to risk profiles, and by risk I mean probability of a negative event times the impact of an event, and then finding tracks to price workflows that align with each of those risk profiles. That is a different approach. There may be a conversation, instead of like, what is your word count rate? What is your price per word? Will be, what is your price per word based on accountability stack? So this one, I need you to be right. This is a high stakes activity. It's going to price something different than this is something I need something cheap and fast. I need to mitigate risk to cost in different ways. And that differentiation becomes a primary pricing discussion stack, compared with historically it's just a flat price list with fuzzy match discounts and MT discounts. These things are, I think, obsolete, and we need a different way of thinking about the pricing. So I would be right if we've done something different than that standard stack. But Chiara's right. It is so easy just to stick with the words because that's easy to count, and then we end up creating a lot of complexity around making that make sense. So
Understood. Very interesting, Erik. Yeah.
Okay, in the essence of time, let's move to our next player to make sure everyone has enough time. Next up is Mario. So Mario, let's hear your bet.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm approaching this from a coaching angle. I've been in the industry almost 10 years, and I've recently focused on helping people with their careers, post layoff, finding a job, but also figuring out what they want. And so, in all the doom and gloom that you led with, I think I could approach this with, we're all screwed. The roads are disappearing, but my big bet is actually not as negative. So to frame this as Erik, my statement here would be that my big bet for 2026 is that AI won't replace localization work or eliminate roles, but it will quietly remove the traditional job titles that we're seeing that maybe me and Chiara would have now, but maybe this year and into next year they might change. And I think we are already seeing some of that. So to give a little bit of nuance, localization management, program management, vendor management is not disappearing. But I think the standard ladder that you might have seen 5 years ago, where you have linguist to project manager to program manager to head of or director of loc, is not there anymore. I don't think we are seeing that anymore. I think it will be more language localization specialist, gathering some knowledge about AI, and then shifting that up into global experience, data, governance, localization engineering, AI specialist, all of that. So from my own practice of clients that are actually coming to me, what I'm seeing is people aren't scared actually of AI tooling and being replaced, but they're scared of being professionally less relevant or being misaligned. I think this is the key one. That people feel stuck, they feel undervalued because showing what localization can do and how it does it is more difficult, and the misalignment is stronger than ever, I think. So people kind of feel unsure. Do I stay in the industry? Is there a future for industry? But the irony is that absolutely. I mean, the skills that we possess and the skills that are needed are more valuable than ever, I think. So we just need to reframe what the market is hiring for. Yesterday's job specs, but now we're in like, we need today's market. People are looking at it kind of in monodimensional way. So yeah, this will be my take. I think either way, storytelling becomes really, really important. I mean, how do you, how do you sell what you have to offer? How do you position yourself, your department, localization value with business impact, speaking the language of our leaders and stakeholders, and elevate into into the data, the governance, the layers at the top. So that would be my take here.
So boiling that down, does that mean your bet is that every localization job will need to have the word AI in it somehow, like, or your job, your resume?
That would be interesting. I think I actually did try to do a bit of research on, get literally AI to analyze whatever 100 job titles, and I think AI is kind of popping up more and more. I don't know if it's as simple as that. I think that's oversimplified, but I think it might be that the titles are changing either into adjacent product and engineering, as part of the engineering stack, maybe as part of design. That's something that we saw at my last company. Yeah, I do think when I Google, literally I did it yesterday or the day before, localization project manager, I remember maybe a year or two ago, there would be hundreds of roles, especially in Dublin where I live, which is the European hub, and now there isn't really any. So I have to kind of dig through the job spec to figure out what skills are being used, and the label is still the same, but under the hood there is other things becoming more important. So AI as part of that, yes.
So what's your advice for if somebody wanted to join the localization industry or start, specializing or upskilling, reskilling in the industry within?
Yeah, I think it's kind of two patterns that I'm seeing. I think it's either you have to lean in and be at the forefront, not just AI fluent, but not being AI dependent, because everybody knows AI these days. Everybody can use it. It's shifting to becoming more about workflows, maybe like a system architect, like leaning in, speaking business impact, shifting your perspective from words and translations and localization and language to AI transformation, process improvements, all of that. Or the other take is, if that's not your cup of tea anymore, take your transferable skills and go into adjacent industries where maybe AI is impacting a little bit less, or at least is not quite what we're seeing for our industry. That would be my advice. I think don't be afraid of AI. Don't think that it's all doom and gloom, because the hiring trends actually aren't, the roles aren't disappearing entirely. Like the market as a whole is still growing. It maybe is a little bit lower than last year in terms of revenues and all of that. But I think our localization industry market is not shrinking. It's just realigning and shifting. So lean into it, and then also think about the stakeholder and the human perspective. Like don't undervalue what AI cannot do, what the machines can't do, which is critical thinking, using your human skills, leadership skills, management, and so on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mario. Time will tell if this comes to fruition or not, but we will give the audience a chance to vote. Let's move to our next player, which is Sahil. Sahil, lay your cards on the table.
Cool, super interesting. Okay, so my bet is that in 2026, like all the TMS, like the translation management systems, like the software side of the things, the companies are going to evolve from just working on the translations, but actually evolving into becoming a content hub itself. So what do I mean by having a content hub is, because today, like any of these TMS companies, they are actually integrated with a multiple number of, like, say, marketing tools. It could be a HubSpot, it could be a content for like different CMSs, different email automation providers, and they all push their data into the TMS for the translation side of the things. With time, I think these companies are going to evolve themselves into becoming a system of record, which means that all the content is going to be like stored into these tools, and they start to become a single source of truth for all the content that the company has. A case in point, or like a use case, like if, like Brit, for example, Brittany is the director of brand. If Brittany wants to tomorrow change a brand element or wants to add a new wording in the brand element somewhere, she can just go to a TMS, change that word, and that change gets propagated into a HubSpot, into a content full. So everywhere, wherever that content actually is, that gets translated, and that decreases the human error. Plus, that also decreases the human effort in itself as well. So because these tools have connectivity to all the different possible marketing tools or even like the HR tools, the single source of truth and the system of record is what I think these tools are going to evolve themselves into. So I think this industry overall would start to evolve from just being as part of the translation side of the things to actually becoming like a single source of truth for all the content that would come out of it. So my bet is like it's going to be a content hub very soon.
Yeah, I think the logic there is sound, but it shifts the question of who controls these assets and where do you stack the capabilities. So you can think of some very, very simple models, like if you have a content management system, then you just tack on a translation layer. Translation could happen right in that content management stack. There's no TMS, it's just right there, and you bring the validation step into the content management stack. So it could eliminate a TMS entirely. The other side of it is the TMS acts like a content management system, and we have these models that are largely like the proxy-based models, where essentially the TMS or the delivery capabilities is where the content lives, and new content gets into that and then distributed from that platform. So you can see areas in which, because the value stack has shifted and the capabilities of each of these elements, these platforms has shifted, there's a different conversation about where you want to orchestrate from, where you need to move things from, and to get from content creation to the eyeballs that are consuming it. So it's interesting to see how does AI and the app, and one thing that I think you're alluding to here that I think is super interesting is when you start adding AI capability changes to everything along a value stack like that, now you're changing multiple systems at the same time. Now you have like AI generated content that you now need to say localize in a different track, keep it separate from your human translation for leveraging or training purposes. It just gets to be a very different kind of ecosystem as you're changing these new capabilities in multiple layers at the same time. So yeah, interesting stuff. So if you had to summarize though the core, summarize for us again the core prediction. More content.
I think
stack. Yeah.
I would say it's like the TMS would start to become a content hub, which is like becoming like a single source of truth or a system of record for all the content that is lying around in different fragmented tools in the companies. So that's
so consolidation of the content stack.
Yes. I think that's a good way to put it.
Do we have time for me to chime in here, Brittany? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it really quick, and then we want to make sure Chiara has plenty of time.
It sounds like a dream what Sahil is describing. I mean, if this becomes true, then I will absolutely, I recently got married, but I will marry you if this happens as a spicy take. I just like the idea of it. I mean, in an ideal world, this is what should have already happened. I mean, we tried. I mean, Chiara, you can speak to that. That's the dream of a client-side log manager, is to have a centralized tool. I mean, the reality, I don't think this will happen this year. To Erik's point, it would make other tools obsolete. All of a sudden, the HubSpots and the Zendesks and whatever the content folds, you can tell your marketers and your designers that you don't need that as a source of truth anymore. I love the idea of one source of truth. I mean, that would be the dream. I just don't see it happening, frankly. Unfortunately. Chiara, what do you think?
You stole the words from my mouth. Yes, it's the dream. Should be happening already. Don't know if it's going to happen. There's always some technical blockers in this. I always like it, but yeah, but are you actually going to be able to do it, to have everything integrated? But yeah, the idea of moving ownership to localization for anything related to content, that's, it's good. I think we can build some stuff from that.
So it sounds like, Sahil, the pressure is on for us to make this year.
I was about to say this. Yeah, true.
We'll prove the haters wrong or the doubters, and then maybe you have a new marriage proposition at the end of the year from Mario. All right, Chiara, last player to come to the table. Let's hear your big bet.
Yes. So I think we have been through a phase of experimentation with AI. Everybody tries Gen AI for content production specifically. And I think 2026 and the following years are going to be about governance and control. And I think this will also shape the role of localization managers or localization teams within enterprises. And how are they going to change? They will run AI operations, or specifically multilingual AI operations. So the role will not only be, the archaic project manager. They will play a very important role in setting quality guardrails, maintaining and evaluating language datasets for AI training, but also enabling other teams within the company to use AI safely and consistently in content production. So this is kind of backed up by the CSA Research, the claim about the prediction about the knowledge graphs, and that's why I interpret it this way. But I think AI ops are going to emerge in companies, and I think localization should play a big role in these AI operation teams. So I want to hear what you think about it.
What do we think, other players? Is Chiara about to lose all of her money on this bet, or is she going to hit it big?
I like it. I think it's a pretty good bet. I think it's a logical prediction. But I want to hear from my colleagues. Would I bet on hers rather than mine? That's a different story.
Yeah, I think it's very logical what Chiara is saying. Like, I mean, by saying it out, I'm actually like pushing it against myself in the betting game altogether. But I think what Chiara is saying is quite plausible. I think the AI ops, like the rise of ops in general, like because there's a lot of AI across the different departments, so you actually need like a central ops function, and in that, I think there's a higher likelihood that the localization would be a part of it. So
Yeah,
it's
I think the
look.
governance thing, yeah, and the governance thing nails it. I mean, I think the control is what really matters, and who is accountable for a particular outcome becomes central to the entire conversation. So it comes into risk management, it comes into process design, it comes to pricing, it hits all these different functions of how do you control. It's great that you have something, that you can produce something, but governance and how to shape the control and the accountability becomes so incredibly important. There's a number of other leaders in the industry who have surfaced this kind of thought process of like how important this is. I guess the question back to you is what is the concrete bet here, that it will be more than it is now, or like what is a smart, like a measurable output from your prediction that we could bet on?
That's a good question. I think it's somehow connected to what Mario was also saying, that we will see other job descriptions, other titles, and it will be maybe hard to measure in this way, but I think ultimately, if you see, I don't know, localization in the C-level, I guess that would be the ultimate goal. And a way to achieve that would be through jumping in on the, let's call it AI trend, the huge AI trend. And then the more you participate in these important functions in the company, the higher you can get up there, and the more likely you can get even higher, right?
Mm-hmm. And that would be a thought that I have just in general for anybody in our industry, including pretty much everybody in the audience, regardless of whether you're tech, LSP, or client ops side of things, or tools developer. Strategy, right? The strategic framework of what we're dealing with has been destabilized by a fundamental shift in how that value stack gets created. So and I always think about this in the terms of solutions design, but if you can think of what is the ROI, or what is the business design of any given function, including your own job, how are you adding value? How are you individually in your tool or your person or your job title, or even in this, what value are we creating with this webinar? That value is something that moves some needle somehow. It changes something. And the impact, the scale of that impact is what will determine what jobs remain in the future, what tools will people buy, what vendors will they select, and how well can you articulate that value compared with what the other alternatives are. And there's always like 4, and we keep on thinking about there's only 4. There's risk reduction, there's cost reduction, there's differentiation, and then there's enablement. And we often think about terms of cost reduction because it's the lowest hanging fruit, but differentiation and enablement are the mind-blowing ones where you start thinking, wow, this is a game changer. There's a fundamental shift in how we're going to do the business. Anybody who gets control of those game-changing strategies and can articulate it better than anybody else, they will win. And I don't mean that by who's, it doesn't matter what role you are in the ecosystem. If you're a translator, you have to designate, I can be accountable for this outcome because I'm an expert in this field, or I know how to use the tools, I can get to the outcome, I can create the value better. That becomes the core. The accountability is a huge, huge part of it. The governance is a huge, huge part of it. Anyway, that's my soapbox finale. I'll shut up.
All right. With that, I think we need to go ahead and close the betting tables, but we have one final round of votes to happen. So we're going to see a poll launch on your screen, and we would love to get your input. Which of these four panelists do you think is going to hit it big in 2026 with their prediction or bet? And let's see those bets coming in so we can make a live prediction here. And we will be turning all of this content into a written blog so we can go back in 2027 and see who actually hit the nail on the head. We have accountability here that we will be pushing. So, wow, it's looking very split so far. Everyone is Sahil, I think you're losing completely here, but no one has confidence in what we can achieve in 2026, but we will prove them wrong. Chiara is up right now, scored with Mario, or tied with Mario, actually. Here we go. Chiara's back in the lead. Let's get a few more votes in here, folks, that are still on the call, just to seal the deal. Oh, it looks like actually, let's give it one more second. And I will end the poll now. So it looks like our final winner, who everyone agrees with, is Chiara. And even I think we had some of our panelists saying maybe they would change their prediction to Chiara. So Chiara, congratulations. Let's see in 2027 if you did indeed win the actual bet. But thank you everyone so much for joining. We'll send you an email tomorrow with the recording of this webinar. And again, we will turn this into some written materials so you can go back and fact check everyone at the end of the year. We hope you enjoyed this event, and there'll be a survey when you leave just asking for your feedback on the event. So again, thank you. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you at our next webinar on February 10th. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.